Celebrating 49 years on the air, award-winning Farm Week is a production of Mississippi State University Extension.
Today on Farm Week, more impact on soybean farmers. Another example, this one from Colorado. Plus more on what's happening trade-wise as tensions ratchet even higher with China. And here at Mississippi State, getting young folks involved in education with the Wood Magic Science Fair. And in our encore feature, speaking of soybeans, what are they and how are they so useful? Farm Week starts right now.
Hello everyone, I'm Zach Ashmore.
And I'm Mike Russell. Great to have you with us again here on Farm Week. In the news, of course, soybeans, just one of many focal points in the trade tensions of the world. Soybeans are grown on nearly 3,000 farms in Mississippi, more than 270,000 farms across the nation, including in Colorado, where we find another example of farm stress since China's soybean purchase from Argentina instead of the U.S. Reporter Brett Forrest has more.
For soybean farmers like Ryan Hansen, he's got plenty of crop this year. But what he doesn't have is a buyer.
I'm pretty disappointed. It's not looking good for us.
This harvest, there's a good supply with low demand. High supply worldwide would normally depress prices anyway, but coupled with low demand,
We haven't sold them yet, but it's probably going to, I don't suppose, hang on to them very long. The market doesn't look very promising.
that low demand is in part due to tariff and trade disputes between the U.S. and China, who happens to account for around 60% of the world's soybean imports. And according to the Department of Agriculture, China was responsible for more than half of all soybean exports out of the U.S. last year. Now, China is turning to countries like Brazil and Argentina, exacerbating the issue.
What overall is the state of soybean farming here in Colorado, but also the U.S.?
Right now, it's terrible, and terrible.
That's Rod Hahn. He's part of the United Soybean Board. His family has farmed in Yuma County for over 100 years.
I don't know. I think they taste good.
He began farming soybeans as a rotational crop in 1998. Right now, he's seeing overproduction, lower demand, and large carryover.
That's the amount of the crop that's left after the growing year that's not used and carried over to the next crop year, and that depresses the price.
In Colorado, soybean farming peaked around 2017 with around 19,000 acres of crop. That dropped to 10,000 acres in 2022 due to some farmers shifting to other crops. But Rod Hahn says they're usually good money and good for the soil. Economists like Tatiana Bailey say the tariffs might be generating revenues, though Americans are paying for them and farmer subsidies are likely incoming.
I don't see any reprieve for the soybean farmers at this juncture. The only reprieve, if you will probably be the subsidies, the additional subsidies above and beyond the ones that already exist.
But Rod Hahn thinks there will be a rebound one way or another, since soybeans have a variety of other applications from biodiesel and firefighting foam to tires and milk alternatives.
Farmers are optimists. You go out every year, and no matter what the last year, what was it like, when you go out to plant your crop, hey, that's going to be the best crop you ever planted.
Soybeans are one of Mississippi's top ag commodities, grown on more than 2 million acres in the state. Last year, more than 127 million bushels were produced. More on soybeans in our encore feature later in the show. In other trade news, whether you agree or disagree with the tariff strategies of the White House, the back and forth happening in the world right now is setting the stage for meetings in November, creating high expectations. Peter Tubbs has that story.
As America's farmers harvest their soybean crop, concerns are growing over where the bushels will go. China continues to avoid U.S. soybeans, preferring to purchase the commodity from Brazil and Argentina. The current 90-day tariff truce is set to expire in early November. The White House proposed 100% tariffs on Chinese imports beginning November 1st and blocking the import of used cooking oil into the United States. China placed export controls on many rare earth metals, which are key ingredients in the manufacture of high-tech electronics around the world. A summit in South Korea between the two countries is scheduled for the end of the month. This week saw more tough talk between the two countries.
中方支持中欧企业
China consistently opposes the overstretching of national security concepts and discriminatory practices targeting companies from specific countries. The relevant country should genuinely uphold market principles and avoid politicizing economic and trade issues. China's determination to safeguard its legitimate rights and interests remains unwavering.
And make no mistake, this is China versus the world. They have put these unacceptable export controls on the entire world. China is a command and control economy, and we and our allies will neither be commanded nor controlled.
Secretary Bessent suggested that an announcement on a trade relief plan may appear this week. During the previous trade war with China, the Trump White House shipped an estimated $60 billion in tariff war relief to U.S. farmers. According to the Council for Foreign Relations, those payments were funded by almost all of the tariff taxes collected at the border between 2017 and 2020. But new checks for farmers will likely be unable to appreciably close the margin between input costs and sales.
It's everything, everywhere, all at once. It's not just tariffs, it's mostly high inputs, but the value of our crops has not kept up with the inflation of the inputs. And then you throw the tariffs on there. And then, you know, when I was doing interviews this spring, I said, I've already bought all my inputs. It's this fall when we're really gonna see, you know, what happens.
Translation: farm inputs are a bit more predictable than tariffs, but prone to inflation, whereas tariffs add a greater level of uncertainty. We'll see about the latter in the months to come.
A bit on the lighter side, here at State, we're all about education, and ag education is a big part of that. However, how do you get the younger generation involved and interested? You hold a science fair, of course. At the Wood Science Lab, they hold a yearly event called Wood Magic Science Fair that's open to all fourth graders across the state. They showcase wood products, nature, insects, science, and some geology tossed in for good measure. What do the organizers have to say about it?
An event we do every year. We do it for 6 days, a Friday plus a full week, where we bring in students from around the state. We invite every fourth grade class from around the state to come and learn about forestry and wood products, particularly in the state of Mississippi, but also it's got national implications, of course. We should have about 3,000 this year. Today will be our biggest day, so we're trying to keep all the staff pumped up because it's going to be a long one, but we're really excited to have this many classes come.
They can smell it, they can see it, they can hear it. They get to do a lot of hands-on activities. Takes them all the way through termites and how they affect the ecosystem and wood. Furniture, how we use wood to build furniture and homes, and they pressure treat and test it, strength testing, whole 9 yards. It's a very hands-on experience for the kids, and they seem to really enjoy it.
This year was the 32nd consecutive Wood Magic Science Fair. It started in 1993 with Dr. Dan Seal, who's now semi-retired and still helps out.
This week, Rosie's Garden, a place of hope in Brandon, Mississippi, a place that provides fresh produce for those in need and offers a chance for kids to volunteer by working the land. Here's Eddie Smith.
Today's Southern Gardening is at Rosie's Garden in Brandon, Mississippi, where volunteers can develop an appreciation for how food is grown and provide fresh produce for those in need.
The garden is made up of 36 raised beds, arranged as a cross, and includes not only vegetable crops, but also herbs and flowers to attract pollinators. As I entered the garden, a beautiful red celosia, also known as coxcomb, caught my eye with its unique twisted plume-like flowers in a vibrant red color. Its bold and curly texture adds a dynamic and ornamental element to the garden. The loofah vines growing in the garden are covered in large yellow flowers, attracting many pollinators. When immature, loofah gourds can be harvested and eaten like zucchini. Once fully mature and dried, their fibrous interior is used as a natural sponge. Loofah vines can grow up to 30 feet long, so they need strong support like a trellis or fence. On the other side of the garden, a trellis of Japanese long beans are in full production, also known as yard long beans or Chinese long beans. They are known for their ability to grow up to 18 inches long and their crisp texture. Okra, tomatoes, eggplants, watermelon, cantaloupes, and many other vegetables are also grown in the garden.
If you are ever in Brandon, Mississippi, stop by Rosie's Garden and see what's growing. I'm Eddie Smith, and I will see you next time on Southern Gardening.
We'll take a break right here, but don't go away. Coming up on our Farm Week feature, it's used for food, for transportation, a variety of industrial products, and it's Mississippi's #3 commodity, soybeans. It's one of the world's most versatile crops, and last year we grew more than 127 million bushels of this row crop right here in the Magnolia State. But what makes the soybean so special and right now so volatile? Watch Zach's special report, What is a Soybean? Coming up on Farm Week.
I believe in people and their hopes, their aspirations and their faith. I believe in my own work and in the opportunity I have to make my life useful to humanity. I believe that education is a lifelong process, and the greatest university is the home. That my success as a teacher is proportional to those qualities of mind and spirit that give me welcome entrance to the homes of the families that I serve. Because I believe these things, I am an extension professional.
Walk across the great state of Mississippi with us. Join the Walk Mississippi and Live Healthy, One Step at a Time program. The Mississippi State University Extension Service is offering this virtual challenge for individuals of any age or teams of family, colleagues, students, church members, or any other group. We're walking 180 miles in 6 weeks, or about 8,000 steps per day, from October 11th to November 21st. Get fit and feel better. Eat healthier, manage your weight, and exercise regularly. There's no fee required, and you'll join our virtual community support group on Facebook and our weekly email list to get health education tips, nutritious recipes, and video demos. Fit more physical activity into your schedule and learn more about the benefits of eating healthy. Visit MSUEXT.ms/walkms to learn more and register today.
Time for the market report. Seems prices on the upswing.
That's right, Mike. Looks like some bearish commodities now getting a second look, and we'll get into it. But first, the numbers. What were the week's biggest gains and losses? And then an overview of the timber industry in Mississippi and its contributions to local communities. And finally, a deeper dive into row crops. An expert tells us what's moving the markets. So, markets closed on the upswing. Livestock the only real hit, while row crops gaining. Let's take a look. The week's biggest gain, lumber, up 24 bucks, nearly a 4% increase from the previous week. The week's biggest loss, sugar, down over half a cent. That's nearly a 4% decrease from the previous week. So we've seen lumber prices continuously rise over the last few months. Looks like demand is still outpacing supply. But what exactly goes into getting that lumber to the market? At the Wood Magic Science Fair, I ran into Dr. Dan Seal, who gave me a thorough rundown.
You have landowners that have trees that when they get cut, you get money that flows into small town banks and has an economic multiplier there. They get shipped to someplace, either a paper mill, a sawmill, an OSB plant that employs people, and that puts money in those local communities. And then the lumber and products oftentimes flow out of state. That brings money back into the state to go in those banks and whatnot to pay landowners for their timber. So the impact is tremendous that forestry has in our state economy.
In our row report this week, another update on grain crops. Analyst Dan Huber thinks the bearish market situation we've had this year may finally be seeing a turnaround. However, he suggests that this year's crops and the trading situation are looking pretty good. We start with wheat and why prices are seeing a slight rally.
I'm going to tend to think it's going to be the former, that we finally are seeing markets not being able to kept under pressure. I mean, not that we've rallied significantly by any stretch of the imagination, but for the group, that was the first weekly higher close, I think, in 4 weeks. And again, certainly 1 week doesn't make a bottom, but again, we've reached levels that we seem to have some value buying in there. What's really the incentive for the bear, I guess, at this point? I mean, we've factored in so much bearish news. In fact, if anything, we're hearing continued, and granted, no official word from the USDA, but we're hearing corn yields probably a little bit disappointing as compared to what expectations were. So, like once you factor all that negative news in there, why hang around? I mean, if you're looking to enhance your earnings for the year, you're going to look for another pasture that's a little greener than the one we're in. So I think it's like I say, the incentive to remain a big bear at this point is becoming less and less every day. I think it's going to be still a solid corn crop. Even in our area, the farmers I've spoken with say, they're good yields. I mean, hardly anything to be disappointed about other than in comparison to where the price levels are at this point in time. So, yeah, not that there won't be some problems here or there, but it's just not the records that we factored in. So it's, and again, when we were talking 186, almost 187 bushel the acre, when you trim back 2 or 3 bushel the acre, then that can shift that balance sheet significantly. And even there, when you really look at the carryout numbers that are projected, domestically they're saying we're going to have 2.1 billion bushels of corn before we start ratcheting back yields. Will we actually get above 2 billion bushels? I think that's pretty debatable at this point. So when you look at it on the stocks to usage ratio, it's pretty standard. We've been this level for the last 2 to 3 years. Of course, most piles tend to want to be picked up by the spring. Corn, regardless if it's even got moisture in it or not, will like to sprout in the spring. So I think we'll get it off the ground. I mean, that's of course, the rule number one, or the objective number one for a grain elevator operator. Tell me what the weather's going to be. Are we going to have a wet, warm winter? If that's the case, then we've got a problem. But if it's a normal winter, then, probably not a big issue. But, I think we were at the point in corn where, domestic usage is still pretty solid. I mean, granted, there's no huge incentive to really kick up or, increase production of ethanol at this point in time. But on the same token, the economy continues to churn along. So, I mean, domestic usage is going to remain pretty strong. Not that we couldn't get some upsets in the livestock market as we move along. And I mean, granted, we're now just getting back into the flu season, and of course, referring to poultry flu. I mean, are we going to see that flare up again this winter? That's a great unknown. But all things equal, I think we pushed it too far to the downside. We need to start recovering back to the higher. So, and realistically, you look at the soybean market; it hasn't gone anywhere for 2 years. So we've been really kind of stuck in a 950, 1050 kind of zone on the front side of the futures. Maybe we can get up and challenge that upper range. One thing about the soybean market, we've of course certainly grown accustomed to not having China in the market. That's the expectation at this point in time. Now, China probably needs to buy 8-9 million metric tons of beans between now and January to kind of fill out the period between here and the new crop of South American. If that does turn around, we have a little bit of a trade agreement. So the surprise then is, of course, friendly. So, not that takes beans to the moon, but, we can at least push back to that higher side of the range.
And that's it for a deeper look into the markets. Seems grain's having a small rally right now, while livestock finally cutting back a bit. Mike?
Thanks, Zach. And this week's Encore features soybeans getting a lot of attention right now. It's one of the most farmed crops in the U.S. and worldwide, but why are they so important? You probably use soy-based products every day without even knowing it. They're a very multi-use crop, and that makes them profitable. Zach takes a deeper look into what makes this plant one of the biggest row crops in the world.
The humble soybean, #1 row crop and the #2 ag commodity in Mississippi, with over 111 million bushels produced in 2020. So, what exactly makes this plant so special? What exactly is a soybean?
So soybean plants are legumes. They'd be related to something like a pea. Legume just means that these plants are able to fix nitrogen from the atmosphere and use it in a form that the plant can use in the soil.
Soybeans have several growth stages that experts normally refer to. The vegetative stages, VE through V4, are essentially the plant's youth. The reproductive stages, R1 through R8, take the plant from flowering to growing pods to harvest. Soybeans have a high protein count, which makes them an excellent food source, both for us and for animals.
The main use of soybean today is likely livestock and poultry feed. Soybeans have a high protein content. When they're processed, it's either done in the form of meal or the oil, and most of the meal is used for animal food. Oils can be used in human food. There's lots of things that we eat every day that we might not even realize that soy is a part of. Other aspects, I'm sure people have heard of biodiesel. That's one use that soybeans contribute to. And there's even things like lubricants and things like that in the industrial sector that soybeans can be used for.
It wasn't always like this, though. The soybean's seen a huge boost in uses over the past 30 years. Used to be, they were only grown on soils where other crops couldn't.
When you look at the history in our state, we primarily were a cotton-producing state historically. And soybeans have been, even in those days, were grown across a lot of acres. They were grown primarily on the acres that probably weren't suitable to produce cotton on. They were grown, as a rotational crop in some cases.
So, why have they become so popular? In short, their adaptability. They're a fairly hardy plant that finds a way to thrive in almost all soil types, at least in Mississippi. They can grow in hard clay soil, sandy soil, and everything in between.
So over the years, soybeans have come a long way. Modern varieties have been adapted to grow in a wide range of latitudes and environments, meaning that there are varieties suitable for extreme northern latitudes with short growing seasons, and further, southern latitudes where we can have longer growing seasons and different daylight times and things of that nature. So soybeans are grown all over the world, really, but they're widely adapted across the U.S.
But that didn't happen overnight. Along with innovative new ways to use soybeans, a lot of research has gone into finding better ways to grow and care for the crop.
More recently, I guess, over the last 10, 15, 20 years, we've changed the way we produce soybeans. We have different management practices that have been adopted. Anybody that's in the production world has heard of the early soybean production system that was developed years ago. That really revolutionized what we're able to do with soybeans. We've increased our yield potential through scouting efforts, technology. Modern genetics have come a long way. So just all the way around the board, we're able to produce more per acre.
So, what are the major issues with growing soybeans? No plant is perfect. Well, most of them have to do with the same issues as other row crops, mainly weeds, bug pests, and disease.
Some of the major issues, or really all of them, are very similar to what other commodities would experience. So weed control is a major concern. In soybean in particular, disease management is a big deal. And, insect pressure can be detrimental to our yield. Those are probably three of the biggest factors that have variability in them.
But the one thing that keeps this crop strong is the same reason it became popular in the first place: its hardiness and adaptability.
Soybeans they're a very forgiving plant if they're given what they need and they're taken care of. So, for example, if you have subpar populations after planting due to weather or too much rain, flooding kind of scenarios, they can compensate, and certain varieties can bush out and compensate for a lack of plant population, so to speak. So You know, the genetic parents of these varieties that we grow, some are more upright in their architecture, some are shorter and bushier, so they'd be more suited to fill out a wider row.
All of these factors combine to create a commodity that's one of the pillars of the ag market and the top row crop in Mississippi, for now. Prices change, and with that also comes decisions for producers.
In a state like Mississippi, where we have our big three of being soybean and cotton and corn, they all kind of fit well together, and really it's just going to be dependent on what the market price is that year as to what the big money-driving selection is going to be.
So, that's the soybean, a plant with many uses and potentially more to come. It's grown all over the world, and although market prices fluctuate regularly, it seems that this commodity will stay relevant for many years to come.
We talk about soybeans all the time, but they really are useful in so many ways. Well, next time on Farm Week, it's an ecological success story, but not everybody's happy. 50 years ago, wolves had all but disappeared, but the Endangered Species Act led to a comeback and ultimately to a common battle, ranchers versus wolves.
Some say it's time to take wolves off the list and let ranchers help with population control, but the law says otherwise, at least in some states.
A no-win situation? We look closer next time on Farm Week.
Remember, if you missed a story, look for past episodes of Farm Week on our website at farmweek.tv.
And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and YouTube. See you next week. Thanks for watching.